Too Many Days by Dr. Seuss, a short poem. Did I ever tell you that Mrs. McCabe had 23 sons and she named them all Dave? Well, she did, and that wasn't a smart thing to do. You see, when she wants one and calls out, "Yoo-hoo, come into the house, Dave," she doesn't get one. All 23 Daves of hers come on the run. This makes things quite difficult for the McCaves, as you can imagine, with so many Daves. And often she wishes that when they were born, she had named one of them Bodekin Van Horn, and one of them Hoo-Foos, and one of them Naneem, and one of them Hot Shot, and the other one Sonny Jim Dean, and one of them Shadrach, and one of them Blinky, and one of them Stuffy, and one of them Stinky. Another one Putt Putt, and so forth, you say, but she didn't do it, and now it's too late. Well, we all kind of get the idea. Sometimes we feel like we're just a Dave among all sorts of other Daves, and that, well, we're just not that quite special. Individual names, in fact, we learn, maybe from this funny Dr. Seuss poem, are kind of important. It's what makes me me. After all, there's only one Elizabeth just like me in the world. And what makes you the unique version of you. Maybe this is why we read in our parsha at the very beginning this week that God spoke to Moses in the wilderness in the tent of the meeting, saying, "Take some of all of the congregations of the children of Israel by their families, their fathers, and so forth. Take a big census. We need to know who's there." So we count. We count people because people count. Like the story I shared that Dr. Seuss at the beginning of all of the Daves, it's easy to get lost in the shuffle. But why take a census? I mean, they've taken multiple censuses before. According to Nahum Sarna, the JPS commentary, for a census almost invariably portends preparation for war or the imposition of a new tax. We understand why it's important to take census. In this country, we do it also, shockingly enough, for the same reason. Taxation, the definition of voting district, planning purposes every 10 years, plus or minus. Beyond the fact that we need to know how many people are living where, their numbers are important for us. We're human beings. We like to count things that we love. For me, sometimes it's how many people are liking one of my TikTok videos or something I might post on Instagram. How many followers some of us may even have. Some people count financial resources, not necessarily as a sign of greediness, of course, but just how much money is in the bank account. For some people, that is an indication of worth, not just of their internal worth and their planning for future retirement, but are they even worthy of our attention or not? If they don't have enough money, maybe we don't want to pay enough attention to them at all. Some people count physical qualities, like calories consumed, miles run or walked, pounds gained or lost, weights lifted at the gym. We count how many steps we've taken, 10,000, of course, the recommended number. Focusing sometimes on purchases we make and how much money did we actually save on all of the BOGOs. We have monitors which tell us how fast our heart is actually beating and how many breaths we're taking. Numbers, if you think about it, are everywhere in our society. We even count age. How old are you? For some of us, we diminish our value as we age, though I think after speaking with Muriel Nathan multiple times, being 101 herself, I think her value has increased as she's aged, but that's just a personal opinion. This isn't new, after all. Pirkei Avot even describes that different ages have different meanings. 5 years is the beginning of the study of the Torah, 10 the Mishnah, 13 the commandments, 40 for understanding, 50 for giving counsel, 60 is a mature age for the rabbis, in case you were curious. 70, that's when it's a hoary head, just watch out. 80, super strength. 90, that's for bending in stature. 100, well, apparently for the rabbis who were probably dead by then. Rashi even focused on the importance of counting. In fact, he said that God counted Israel on very specific times because they were most dear to God. When we left Egypt, God counted when we sinned the golden calf to find out how many of us were left. God counted us again in the book of Numbers so that God would know when God's Shekhinah or presence could dwell among us. Yet Jewish tradition loves to say, we don't like to count people. In fact, there's a tradition of how do you count a minyan? You don't count it 1, 2, 10. Ashrei, Yoshvei, Veitecha, and you start to slowly count through all of the verses of Psalms, knowing that this verse has 10, and each person is given the name or a word in that psalm. Rabbi Jonathan Sachs even goes so far as to articulate the challenges faced by counting. In any census, count, or roll call, he says, there's a tendency to focus on the total number, the crowd, the multitude, the mass. Here's a nation of 60 million people, a company of 100,000 employees, a sports crowd of 60,000 people in the stadium. Any total tends to value the group or nation as a whole. The larger the total, the stronger the army, the more popular the team, the more successful the company. And yet, he highlights that counting devalues individuals and makes him replaceable. If one soldier dies in battle, another will take his place. If one person leaves an organization, someone else can be found to replace him. The biblical worldview kind of had a similar sense. In fact, King David was punished when he took a census. He was demonstrating a lack of faith that God would be with him when he entered battle even. And he was given a choice when he counted the census to make sure he had enough of an army. The punishment was a 7-year famine, a 3-month fight with an enemy, or 3 days of pestilence. At the end, he chose the pestilence, and 70,000 Israelites died. The interesting thing, of course, is we're chatting about counting and numbers and breaths and weights, and every way that we count counts. We tend to cherry pick sometimes numbers that we count. We manipulate numbers. We look at statistics and even alter the meaning. We inflate certain things. We tend to even look at causation without correlation. I think there was an incident very famous that people thought that polio may even be caused by ice cream or swimming pools because of the correlation that more people had it in the summertime. They realized that it had nothing to do with swimming pools or ice cream much later.
I like ice cream.
I like ice cream too, Simon. I do want to think about the fact that numbers matter. They're important, but I want to challenge us and have us think about, what are we really counting? Why are we counting it? Are we really paying attention to it for a good reason? And what value judgment are we actively placing on that number? Is it a sign of faith? Or is it a sign of lack of faith? Are you saying that the pounds are creeping up really matter or not? Don't let the numbers lie. After all, they are there to help us, help guide our decision making if we allow them to. I want to close with a quote from Abraham Joshua Heschel, which he gave at a speech at the White House Conference on Aging in 1961. May I suggest that a man's potential for change and growth is much greater than we are willing to admit, and that old age be regarded not as the age of stagnation, but as the age of opportunity for inner growth. The years of old age may enable us to attain the high values we fail to sense, the insights we have missed, the wisdom we have ignored. They are indeed formative years, rich in the possibility to unlearn the follies of a lifetime, to see through the inbred deceptions, to deepen understanding and compassion, to widen the horizons of honesty, to refine a sense of fairness. So let's make sure that the numbers that we're looking at count. that they count in terms of the values that we have in life, the value of loving each other, respecting one another, and ultimately valuing the divine in ourselves and those around us. Shabbat Shalom.